Hello there, people of YouTube. This is Jolt for 109, and I am continuing my listening reaction, I guess, to something sweet to bite. Okay. I don't know where to go from here. I mean, I don't know what to expect. Anything could happen. I was expecting lots of bad stuff to happen in part 2, and it was just a lot of suspense, which I don't know. This story, oh man, it's gonna mess with me so hard. Okay, I have snacks with me this time. I had a sandwich with me last time. I had me some chips. I got me goldfish and this. Yeah, got a whole bunch of stuff to keep me preoccupied. And of course, I got my water. So it's also hot. So you can see the fan is turning. So, yeah. Okay. Anyways, enough of that. Okay. Man, sorry for so awkward. It's just... I don't know what to do. It's crazy. By the way, just quick note here. Part 2 is rendering. Right now. I have to render it twice so I can put the video overlapping this video, and then I can go add to render that, and then I go in again to edit in, you know, any text or anything that I might want to have in another software that I use, because I haven't figured it out with the one I'm using. So yeah, I render it twice. It's like over 6 hours of rendering. Man, it's crazy. Anyways, it's almost done, but anyways, I want, in the meantime, I want to try to get this reaction done. Whoa, don't mess up everything. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. Okay. Jeez, don't fall. This part is 36 minutes, so keep that in mind. Let's do this. 3, 2, 1. Go.
Well, geez, you don't have to be so rude about it, Scootaloo. I was just seeing how you girls were doing.
Pinkie Pie put on a hurt face, though it was hard to take it seriously while she was balancing a cake on her head.
I'm sorry, Pinkie. I didn't mean to snap.
Apologized the Pegasus filly as she stirred the contents of a large bowl with a wooden spoon.
Thanks again for letting us use the kitchen while you're working. It's just that making candy is a lot harder than some pony made it out to be.
Sweetie Belle smiled guiltily as Scootaloo glared at her. The Pegasus hadn't known it was possible to burn taffy, but the brittle black substance congealing at the bottom of the pan soaking in the kitchen sink was proof that if it could burn, Sweetie Belle would find a way.
It's okay,
Smiled Pinkie Pie, her sunny disposition quickly melting away in her cloudy expression.
I'll be back here in a little while to help you out. I just have a few more orders to fill and a couple of customers to clean up after, and then we can really get this candy-making experiment underway.
Pinkie Pie darted out of the kitchen, the cake on her head doing a slight pirouette in the air thanks to the suddenness of her exit. Sweetie Belle arched an eyebrow.
You told her we were doing experiments with candy?
Scootaloo sighed heavily and tipped the contents of her bowl onto a sheet of greased paper.
No, I told her we need to make candy for school. She got it in her head that it was some kind of science project. She thinks if we're going to get a good grade, we should experiment with different flavors and additives to see if we can come up with some stupendorific new flavors. Honestly,
What?
I don't care what it tastes like, so long as it looks like candy. It's not like we have to eat what we make.
That's probably a good thing.
Sweetie Belle blushed. She hadn't only managed to burn the toffee to a crisp, but somehow had turned chocolate into a bubbling tar-like mess as well.
I'm sorry that I haven't been more help.
For once, she could admit she didn't know the first thing about cooking. That didn't stop her from trying, but even her boundless optimism was threatened by their situation. It had been nearly a week since they made their bet with Diamond Tiara, and Nightmare Night was tomorrow. Despite having had a week to prepare, the Cutie Mark Crusaders had not managed to make much candy. They tried, it was just that it felt like there was something actively trying to hold them back. Scootaloo sighed heavily.
It's not your fault. Apple Bloom has more work to do at home than at school, so tonight will be the first and only time she's going to contribute anything. I'm glad she'll have a chance to make sweets with her sister Applejack, but those two were already going to make caramel apples for tomorrow's festival. I hope she has time to make extra treats on the side.
Scootaloo shook her head in doubt and frustration.
Even if she does, I can't help but think that Apple Bloom's help is going to be too little too late.
She took the bowl and spoon she had been using to the sink and ran warm water over both.
And I know you tried, Sweetie Belle.
Scootaloo continued as the water filled in the bowl.
But your attempts to make candy with Rarity were pretty much doomed from the start. For her being so busy selling dresses and costumes for Nightmare Night, you were lucky to make the few pieces you did.
She turned off the water and back to the counter she was working at, wiping a bit of perspiration from her brow.
Pity that Rarity insisted they be made with only fresh gourmet ingredients and primped and shaped and molded into something that no pony will ever believe came from our trick-or-treating.
It was true. The treats Sweetie Belle had managed to make looked more like wedding cakes than candy.
What?
So it really was down to Scootaloo. Fortunately, though she had the least experience with trying to prepare food, it seemed the Pegasus had a knack for it.
I know, but I'm here to help you now.
Rallied Sweetie Belle.
Between you and Pinkie Pie, we already made a small amount of candy. We should have enough in no time.
The
I don't
truth of
think
the
so.
matter was that since Scootaloo was essentially having to take up the slack for her other two friends, the Pegasus filly was getting a little testy, and perhaps rightfully so. She was, however, getting the job done. Though this had all been Sweetie Belle's idea, and now she was doing the lion's share of the work, Scootaloo was actually enjoying herself. Working with Pinkie Pie making treats was actually a lot of fun. That was one of the only things that seemed to be going their way. Pinkie Pie was completely oblivious to what they were actually doing, and if she did find out, Scootaloo wasn't sure the mischievous pink pony would care. Just to be on the safe side, they'd kept her from seeing the book pages that Scootaloo was using for most of her recipes, and it was going to be a close thing. But if Scootaloo kept at it, they should have enough candy to win their bet and finally put Silver Spoon and Diamond Tiara in their place.
Yeah, well, hand me that bag of granulated sugar, would ya?
Asked Scootaloo, as the two fillies continued making one semi-edible treat after the other.
Why one at a time?
Meanwhile, Pinkie bustled about her business, working the front counter of Sugar Cube Corner. The entire bakery had been transformed into something of a haunted house. Cobwebs hung here and there, along with ghosts and bats, and more than one fake skeleton was posed humorously on extra chairs. It was unclear if any pony but Pinkie really appreciated the holiday decor. Most of the dine-in customers that came in for afternoon snacks had left, so now she was just gathering up any dirty plates and restocking the display case. There would be a few takeout customers later. The bakery did the brisk trade after all, but things always seemed to wind down in the afternoon. Pinkie was just putting more bat and pumpkin-shaped cookies into a skull-shaped jar on the countertop when she heard the bell to the shop door ring. It was odd to get a customer at this time of day, but Pinkie Pie was ready to greet them with her biggest, most cheeriest smile. As soon as she saw who it was, however, her face fell.
Oh, hello, Twilight. Shall I go get Mrs. Cake so she can take your order?
No, I'm not here for treats, said the unicorn a little gruffly.
What?
Now, I'm sure they're delicious, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with them. And before you say anything, I'm not here to fight with you either, Pinkie.
Pinkie Pie lowered her head.
Why is there beef
Twilight had
between
preempted everything
Pinkie
she was
and
about to
Twilight?
say, so for once, the pink pony was speechless. Celestia's favorite student smiled sheepishly and started to pull something out of her saddlebag. I came to apologize, Pinkie. We haven't really been on proper speaking terms this past week, and I realize now that was mostly my fault. She set the book Ye Old Tricks and Treats on the counter between them. It still looked old and beat up, but it was clear most of the pages had been rebound to their weathered spine.
Did you read it?
She nudged the book with one hoof as she expected it to jump up and skitter away like a living thing. Twilight frowned.
What?
Yes, I did. Gotta say, Pinkie, I can see why you'd be upset now. A lot of these old myths and legends are downright blood-curdling. The horror stories of today have nothing on these old folk legends. Some of them I've come across before, but never in such graphic detail. What about the headless horse?
Graphic.
Twilight Sparkle's words trailed off as she visibly shivered. I don't think I'll be able to tell that story at slumber parties anymore. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I got so mad at you, Pinkie Pie. A sappy smile spread over Pinkie Pie's face as she said,
between us?
Without warning, Pinkie
Oh, that's
vaulted over
why.
the counter and hugged her friend
Got my
tightly.
mind.
Twilight was surprised at first, but then reciprocated the gesture of affection, bringing a happy end to the unhappy feud. They parted, and the party pony's face grew uncharacteristically serious.
I hope you can see why I'm worried about the girls now, though. Even if it is all just stories, there's bound to be a grain of truth in at least one of them. Just like the story of the Mare and the Moon. It's better to be safe than sorry.
I'm not one for believing in superstitions, Pinkie, but when it comes to you, I'm willing to put logic aside and accept certain things on a little faith.
Twilight smiled and nudged her friend playfully.
Just don't push it. We'll work together and make sure every pony has a fun and safe nightmare night. Where have the girls been, by the way? I haven't seen the Cutie Mark Crusaders since they were helping you put up decorations.
Oh, they've been super busy, just like me. They've been making candy for a school project or something, and I've been helping out when I can.
It's not a
Scoodaloo and
project.
Sweetie Belle are in the kitchen right now. I promised them I'd give them a helping hand once I finished out here.
A thought seemed to occur to her.
Oh, hey, do you want to help me out too, Twilight?
I really don't know the first thing about cooking, Pinkie. I know how to conjure a few mana strudels, and that's about it.
Said Twilight doubtfully.
Oh, come on, it'll be fun.
I don't know.
Please.
Twilight looked into her friend's huge pleading eyes and sighed. She just finished making up with her, and already her friend was trying to get her to do things that would throw off her daily schedule. Still, she didn't want to threaten the fledgling piece by denying her friend's request, even if she didn't have the time for something as silly as making candy for a school project. Actually, come to that, why would she really possibly want her students making candy right before Nightmare Night? Wouldn't there be plenty of candy after every pony went trick-or-treating? Something here didn't exactly add up.
Sure, Pinkie, why not? Lead the way.
Scoodaloo was just finishing up her last batch of peppermint swirls when Pinkie Pie and Twilight Sparkle came into the kitchen.
Why is Sweetie
This
on the
would have
floor?
been fine, but Sweetie Belle was looking over the torn pages from the book Twilight Sparkle had just finished mending. This was not the best time to see if there was anything she thought she could make that might not burn. Things kind of got a bit out of control from there,
What are you two doing?
bellowed Twilight Sparkle. Sweetie Belle hastily tried to hide the pages as Scoodaloo smiled as innocently as she could manage.
Hi, Twilight. Fancy seeing you with Pinkie Pie. I guess that means you two made up.
Twilight Sparkle glared at the Pegasus filly as Sweetie Belle fell off the stool she was sitting on, and the torn pages went everywhere.
Oh, boy.
Oh, and what are we doing? Just making candy for a school project. Right, Pinkie Pie?
One of the pages landed gently in front of the pink pony's hooves. Pinkie Pie was not smiling.
Uh-oh.
Is that what you're doing, Scoodaloo? Because to me it looks more like you're using up Mr. and Mrs. Cake's supplies to win the bet you made with Diamond Tiara.
And using stolen property from the Ponyville Library to do it.
Finished Twilight Sparkle as she used her magic to gather up the torn
Technically,
pages
it's
from
stealing
Yale
if you
Tricks and
borrow
Treats.
it. It is a
I knew that there were some pages
library.
missing, but I had thought it had either been crumbled to dust or had gotten lost in the library. How could you girls take these pages without permission?
The pair of fillies looked down guiltily.
We're sorry, Twilight, but Diamond Tiara always cheats at these sorts of things. We just thought we'd even things up. We didn't mean to hurt any pony. I promise we were just going to get the pages back.
Said Sweetie Belle.
That's not before Nightmare Night.
You lied to me, Scoodaloo?
Asked Pinkie, the slight twitch of her lower lip showing that she was clearly hurt.
Well, all I ever said was that we were making candy for school, which was true. We thought Diamond Tiara might finally stop bullying us if we could beat her just one time.
Even as she said it, she could see that this answer was not good enough for the pouting pony.
I'm sorry, Pinkie Pie. We should have been honest from the start. I guess we just weren't thinking straight. I'll say you weren't. When your teacher hears about this, I'll bet she'll.
Pinkie Pie put one hoof over Twilight's mouth before she could finish speaking. She seemed to be staring at the pages as they floated in Twilight's magical grasp. Her eyes narrowed.
Did you make all the candy this week from the recipe on these pages?
Asked Pinkie seriously.
Well, most of it, yeah. Why?
As Scoodaloo perplexed, she had expected the two older ponies to be chewing them out, not asking questions with obvious answers.
Twilight, we need to gather up all of the candy and take it to Nightmare Moon's statue
said Pinkie Pie, suddenly alarmed. Twilight looked as confused as the girls did.
I don't think that really matters right now, Pinkie.
No, I think it does matter, Twilight, because I think I know what story these recipes come from.
The pink pony quickly moved into action. She tipped the unfinished treat Scootaloo had been working on in the waste basket and started going around the kitchen, gathering up other sugary candies and snacks from the pantry.
What's the title on the first of those 3 pages?
It took a moment for Twilight Sparkle to sort through the pages. She knit her brow as she read clearly, thinking this was all more Pinkie Pie's silliness. However, when she found the page in question, her face paled. Candy Mare? Twilight dropped the ancient pages carelessly and scrambled to help Pinkie Pie. Scootaloo and Sweetie Belle sat where they had this entire time, watching the 2 older ponies freak out as they gathered up all their hard work. They were used to seeing Pinkie do strange things with frantic energy, but watching Twilight snatch up every last piece of candy corn, as if the fate of the world depended on it, was a disturbing sight to say the least. Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo shared a glance. The white unicorn shrugged. She was as clueless as Scootaloo.
Who or what exactly is the Candy Mare?
The 2 older ponies paused in their frenzy long enough to glance at one another. A silent question passed between the 2. Pinkie Pie nodded and continued gathering treats. Twilight cleared her throat a bit nervously and began to tell a story.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time, in the land where ponies lived and played before the founding of Equestria, there was a filly who dreamed of nothing more than seeing the castle where the noble unicorns lived. But the filly was the daughter of poor earth ponies, and their lot was to farm the land even as the enchanted winter of the Wendigos withered their harvest and choked their fruits on the vine. Despite their hardship, the tiny family was happy, for the filly blessed her mother and father with smiles and love that helped them bear their burdens. The filly's father, knowing of his daughter's wish to see the castle, made arrangements with a business partner to allow her into the city for 1 day, and 1 day only, for in those days earth ponies could only be in the city on business. The filly was delighted when her father told her the news. She was even more delighted when she beheld the castle town firsthand. She wanted to see everything, to take it all in, but her father still had business to do, so they met with his partner. Now Lemon Drop, the unicorn, was the owner of the candy shop in the castle town. Though the children loved him, they didn't know he had a twisted heart. Lemon Drop didn't understand children, and he couldn't taste anything sweet, only sour. He made his living on recipes his grandmother had written down, but he could never get the flavors quite right. Slowly, he was losing money. Soon he would lose his shop. But Lemon Drop had a twisted heart, as I said, and he had formed a twisted plan. In those days, no pony cared if a pony from one of the other tribes disappeared, and it wasn't hard to entice earth ponies to bring their children to see the city. He would let them come into his shop and eat his sweets. Then he would kill their parents and spirit the fillies and colts away, forcing them to eat all of his strange and twisted attempts at making better candy. A similar fate was to befall the happy filly of our story and her father when they visited Lemon Drop's shop. A similar, horrible fate, yet different in ways too terrible to imagine. For those children whom Lemon Drop often stole away would shortly die, unable to live on candy alone. But this little filly, with her heart so full of love for life, did not. She lived and lived and lived.
I just got chills.
A breakthrough. It's astonishing to say the least, but I know, that all my hard work has finally paid off. The current subject's body grew stiff and still after introducing new batches of confections, laced with preservative spells and trace elements of alchemy. I'd thought to have run into another failure, another brick wall, but shortly the subject awoke with the most delightful fit of laughter. While it was true she was babbling something about having a bad dream, the subject was absolutely begging to try various batches of candy, both new and old. The subject has been eating non-stop for hours with every sign of relishing my candy craft. I will need to research why the other subjects failed to survive this round of testing while the current subject seems to be thriving. But for now it's all I can do to keep her hunger satisfied. That sound in the background of this recording is the subject throwing herself at the walls repeatedly. I was worried at first that she might injure herself as some of the other subjects had attempted before her. but she seems to calm whenever she is fed. All she wants is to eat my candy. I've never seen such an appetite for what I have to offer. I think it's the first time I understand why my family was so dedicated to this business. Hold on, what's this? Somebody is at the main shop. Who's there? I warn you, I will call the castle guard if you try to steal any of my creations. What? Little miss, what are you doing out of the testing chamber?
Hungry.
Hungry? Of course, of course. I'm working on another batch of confections for you right now. Just go back to the testing chamber. There's a good girl.
But it's nightmare night.
Nightmare night? You said that before. Perhaps my experiment isn't quite the success I'd hoped. Still, come along, and we'll see what we can do in the next phase of testing.
But it's nightmare night. Oh, what a fright. I hunger. I need. I want. Oh, please, 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 please. Give me something to sweet to bring my life.
What are you doing? No! No! No!
So sweet, fresh, and
I just got chills.
Lemon Drop was found, but his twisted heart and much of his twisted body was not. Not all at once, at least. That night, an entire castle of ponies vanished. In those days, no pony cared if a pony from another tribe were to disappear. It wasn't until the next day when the Earth ponies came to make their daily deliveries, and one particular mother came looking for her daughter and husband, that grisly discoveries were made. There was no real explanation, but whispers began to spread through the various tribes of a monster that begged for treats, but was more than happy to feast on the flesh of pony kind. The creature haunted the edges of society, hiding in the depths of dark forests and bogs. It was said it would lure children away if it had the chance, never to return. It was worse one night out of the year, the anniversary of the unicorn's disappearance. Soon, the tribes came to call it the Nightmare Night. Parents would disguise their children and themselves in costumes on that night and leave piles of treats outside their doors, hoping and praying to fool or please the monster. Many stayed up all night, waiting for the first rays of daylight to drive away the darkness that preyed upon their lives. For it was found strong light could drive the beast back, but not away, not for long. Only sunlight seemed to lay the creature to rest, only for her to rise again come the night. Over the years, this monster that had been a little girl seemed to delight in punishing all of pony kind. Those she could not devour, she tormented with mean-spirited tricks and traps, often as deadly as an encounter with the monster itself. Those houses that left treats seemed to fare better, but none were spared her wrath. Perhaps she was merely playing with her food, as she was quickly to follow pony kind to Equestria after its founding. It wasn't until the rise of the Pony Sisters that this creature was last driven back permanently into the darkness. Luna, the Mare of the Moon, tracked down the beast and purified it with moonlight, making it fall dormant in the dark of the night just as it would in daylight. Thus, it was that the Candy Mare, as she was known, was rendered naught but candy. This Luna further purified and scattered. So it is that we honor Luna on Nightmare Night by gathering treats in her name and offering them as tribute to she who saved us from the nightmare, the Candy Mare. May this story be tribute to her throughout the ages. Leave you a few treats to be purified by the image of the Mare and the Moon, and may the Candy Mare never rise again.
Backstory. Wow.
So, the recipes?
Began Scootaloo.
Our list of different confections that Lemon Drop force-fed his victims.
Twilight finished for her.
This story was vague on why the list was included, only to say that the creation of such treats are expressively forbidden. Apparently, a large part of the reason the tributes paid to Nightmare Moon are actually part of the purification ritual to render candy, all candy in Equestria, safe to eat.
That's not what Shirley taught us in school,
said Sweetie Belle, breaking the silence that followed the last of Twilight Sparkle's words.
That was one wild story, Twilight. Do you really think the candy we made is, what, a recipe to make a monster?
said Scootaloo nervously, a disbelieving chuckle in her voice.
Yeah, you don't sound very
I
sure
don't know what I
yourself.
believe, girls, but I know you're in a lot of trouble. And we may be in even more trouble if we don't do what the story suggests. There is a bit of residual magic around the statues of Luna. If it is some kind of purification spell from ancient time that clings to her image, then it won't hurt to leave this ill-gotten candy out there as tribute.
This was all that Twilight said before continuing to help Pinkie gather up all the treats Scootaloo had worked so hard to make. For her part, Pinkie Pie already had on her scarf and 2 bulging burlap sacks strapped across her back. With a stern look, she was heading out the back door and towards the edge of the Everfree Forest. Neither filly had ever seen such a severe look on the usually chipper pony's face. For the first time, they grasped just how much trouble they were really in. There was no way they could possibly win their bet now.
Have you noticed it's always kind of dark here?
Asked Pinkie Pie in hushed tones as she and Twilight drew near the statue of Nightmare Moon. The trees seemed to shift back and forth against the purple hues of the oncoming twilight. Leaves danced gently between the 2 ponies, the harsh skittering sound of the playful wind putting the pair on edge.
It's just because the Everfree Forest has such dense foliage. It absorbs much of the light from above, even though we're only at its edge,
responded Twilight Sparkle, though a little less confidently than she normally would. It was true that the forest was thick even in autumn, but the sky above the statue always seemed to be choked with dark, forbidding clouds, even when the rest of Equestria was enjoying a sunny day. There was an air of magic and gloom here that always seemed slightly out of place, save for during the darkest of nights. Twilight Sparkle hadn't thought about it before, but it did seem odd that there would be a statue to Nightmare Moon here. She was a creature whom many ponies had feared in the past, even when she was locked away as the Mare in the Moon. One would have thought such an image would have been torn down or replaced, not left to brood out in the middle of nowhere. And for such an old statue, there is no moss or vines growing on its surface. Indeed, the entire thing seemed to shimmer slightly in the dying rays of the setting sun.
I don't know about all that, Twilight. All I know is I want to get rid of this creepy candy and get back home. This place is giving me a bad case of the twitches.
Pinkie set down her bags of candy before the statue of Nightmare Moon and retreated out of the way so Twilight could do the same. It wasn't until the unicorn set her bags before the image of the Princess of the Night that the pink pony breathed a sigh of relief.
Well, I guess we better go give Sweetie Belle and Scootaloo a lecture,
said Twilight, a bit uncertainly. A slight shift in one of the sacks of candy caught her eye. It almost looked like something was moving inside the bag, but that was a silly idea. She was about to mention it to Pinkie when a sudden peal of thunder rumbled nearby. Looking up, the pair of ponies noticed the sky was turning pitch black over the Everfree Forest. The forest often had its own wild weather patterns, untamed by Pegasi as the rest of Equestria's weather was. It seemed that while Ponyville behind them was settling into a calm, if foggy, night, the Everfree Forest was in for a downpour. The wind began to howl mournfully around the statue of Nightmare Moon, as forks of brilliant lightning licked over the sky in long skeletal branches. The wind turned bitterly cold. Pinkie Pie's teeth started chattering like mad.
Yeah. Great idea, Twilight. Let's get to lecturing.
The pink pony grabbed her friend suddenly and ran so fast from the small clearing that they were little more than a streak of pink and purple.
I'm getting a little bit worried.
Behind them, the contents of the bag of candy shifted again. Perhaps it was fortunate that the only ears present were that made of stone, for the sound of childish laughter might have frozen the blood and stopped the heart of a more fleshy creature. A pale mist rose from the ground, and as it enveloped the clearing, the statue to Nightmare Moon was struck by a thick bolt of orange lightning. The statue was completely destroyed. Yet as the dust cleared, something stood motionless in the smoking crater that was left behind,
Shit.
surrounded by empty bags. Something that smiled.
Oh, fuck.
I can't believe we have to tell Apple Bloom that we've been forbidden from trick-or-treating.
Shouted Scootaloo in exasperation.
Calm down, Scootaloo. It's not so bad.
comforted Sweetie Belle.
It's bad enough to have to help Spike pass out candy at the library, but I don't think I can handle seeing the look on Apple Bloom's face when we have to tell her we can't collect a single piece of candy for ourselves.
Scootaloo propelled herself along the dirt road half-heartedly on her scooter, the dejected look on her face mirrored by Sweetie Belle as she walked beside her. It was a strange picture on so a sunny day, especially as the pair were wearing costumes. Scootaloo was dressed up as Ne'er-do-well, though she wasn't wearing the mask right now. Sweetie Belle was wearing a robot costume made out of cardboard boxes Rarity's material had come in. She'd made it herself, and she would have worn it proudly if it wasn't for the current circumstances.
At least we'll be able to spend Nightmare Night together,
said the unicorn filly, trying to cheer up both herself and Scootaloo, unsuccessfully. Rarity had been pretty mad when she found out the decorative delicacies she crafted were not only made for purposes of cheating on a bet, but were also from the recipe book for an apparent filly-napping murderer.
Oh
Look on
my
the
god.
bright side. If we don't collect any candy, then that means Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon won't get any extra from us when they win the bet. We won't have any candy of our own, but it's only a couple of months until heartwarming. Then there will be loads of sweets and a nice long break from school so we don't have to look at their smug faces.
I guess so, said Scootaloo sulkily, as they turned up the drive to Sweet Apple Acres. It was weird after looking forward to this day for weeks with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension, to suddenly have Nightmare Night just be another school night. Thinking about it, she had to admit she ought to be thankful they were both still being allowed to participate in Nightmare Night at all. Neither Pinkie nor Twilight seemed to think that they needed to be severely punished, but there was no way they were going to let them do anything that might let them win the bet now. They just have to sit back and take the teasing from Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon yet again, and enjoy what little of their Nightmare Night they could without trick-or-treating. As they drew closer to the house, moving among the apple trees that were now stripped bare of their leaves, a wave of apprehension washed over the pair. Neither of them noticed it at first, but there were no birds singing, nor any squirrels darting among the fallen leaves. Everything was still. There wasn't even a breath of wind. The pair silently walked up to the front porch, neither realizing that they were holding their breath as they knocked on the front door. They stood there for a moment, fidgeting, their costumes suddenly hot and uncomfortable, despite standing in the shade. Finally, Scootaloo lost her patience.
Apple Bloom, Applejack, are you home? We've got something we need to tell you.
Is this
She pressed her
nighttime?
ear to the slightly peeling wood, hoping to hear the sound of some pony coming to answer the door. She didn't know why, but she'd even be happy if Granny Smith answered them at this point.
Where is every pony? Maybe they're all already in town?
Thought Sweetie Belle aloud. A door slammed, causing the pair of fillies to jump as one. They whirled in time to see the door of the barn, not far from where they stood, swing inward on broken hinges.
Or maybe they're in the barn.
The pair walked the short distance to the big building. A pile of ashes stood in front of the barn door. As they drew nearer to the dark portal of the barn door, both fillies slowed. Bits of wood were scattered all around the threshold,
Oh no.
and it was
Oh,
clear
no.
that something severely damaged the barn. Neither filly seemed too thrilled with the idea of going inside.
Oh shit.
Hello?
Tried Scootaloo.
Is any pony there?
All was silence for a moment.
Unfortunately, no.
Just for a moment. Then a soft giggle, barely more than a whisper, seemed to drift from the darkness.
Oh, hi, girls. It's good to see y'all. What brings you out this way?
The voice was Applejack's. She sounded friendly, but the farm pony's voice was also distant and hollow, almost as if she were at the back of a cave, not inside a barn. Something moved towards them from the shadows, but they couldn't quite make it out,
We were just coming to pick up Apple Bloom.
said Sweetie Belle. Something made her hold back from telling Applejack why.
Well, that's all right. We're just finishing up these delicious caramel apples. You two want to come inside and try a couple? I'd sure as shootin' appreciate your feedback on how they turned out.
There was an echo to Applejack's voice as she moved closer. She was still just inside the barn, and all they could clearly make out was a pony in a hat.
Nah, that's okay.
Scootaloo said, edging away from the broken door.
We just want to grab Apple Bloom and get back to Ponyville. Where did you say she was?
Well, like I said, little missy, she's in here with me. Here, I'll go get her for you.
Uh-oh.
Apple Bloom, your friends are here to see you.
Uh-oh.
Applejack turned and faded into the darkness.
Oh my
A few
god.
moments passed, and another, much quieter voice drifted from the shadows.
Hey girls, what's up?
A filly's face floated like a tiny moon, just barely moving in the light. The red bow in her hair was a dead giveaway, though, even in the shadows. Sweetie Belle didn't understand why, but both she and Scootaloo sighed with relief.
Not much, Apple Bloom. We've got some bad news. Pinkie Pie and Twilight figured out what we were doing. They took away all the candy I made. And they said as punishment, we're not allowed to go trick-or-treating tonight to collect any candy for the bet.
Finished Sweetie Belle,
Yeah, we have to pass out candy with Spike at the library instead.
said Scootaloo, making a face.
I hope you're not too upset.
Why would I be upset?
Asked the voice of their friend.
We'll get to hang out together all the same. So what if we can't go trick-or-treating? We can fill up on some delicious caramel apples now and then eat up some more tasty treats later. Come on inside. The apples are absolutely delicious.
Neither Scootaloo nor Sweetie Belle had expected this kind of reaction. Of the three of them, it was Apple Bloom that often took Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon's teasing the most to heart. The candy had never really mattered to her. It was beating those two snobs that was her first priority,
That's okay, Apple Bloom.
said Sweetie Belle.
We really ought to get going. It'll be sundown soon, and we had best be at Twilight before it starts getting dark. She'll be really mad if she thinks we're trying to skip out on our punishment. Are you ready to go?
The silence descended again, and for a moment, neither of the girls knew if their friend was still there. Then Apple Bloom replied.
No, I'm not ready.
She paused again, and then quickly added,
I need to help put on my costume. Can you girls come in here and give me a helping hoof? Then we can grab a few candy apples and be on our way.
Why don't you just get Applejack to help you?
asked Scootaloo, suddenly suspicious. Both she and Sweetie Belle had backed far away from the barn by now.
And why does your voice sound so weird?
What do you mean?
Asked Apple Bloom, her voice barely more than a whisper, an echo of an echo.
Why do you and your sister want us to come in there and eat candy apples?
Whispered Sweetie Belle, her eyes locked on Apple Bloom's face. Slowly that face rose, inch by inch, until it hovered high over the pair, its mouth hanging open as it moved forward into the sunlight, exposing empty eye sockets in one fleshless cheek. Dried blood was matted around the mouth and eyes, and something else, something brown and shiny. Caramel.
What's the matter with you girls? Don't you like apples?
Said Apple Bloom's voice as her grotesque severed head mimed the words. Piercing childlike laughter echoed from inside the barn as the head shot out of the darkness and rolled at the filly's hooves. Both girls screamed, backing away from the horrible sight.
It doesn't matter. It's nightmare night. What a fright.
Howled many voices. They swiftly faded into child's whispers, the hushed tones of a promise.
Soon, there'll be so many.
The laughter and the image of Apple Bloom's eyeless skull filled the fillies' minds as they stumbled over their own hooves to get to Scootaloo's scooter. They had to tell some pony. This horror was completely beyond them. There had to be an adult who would know what to do. Scootaloo might not have been much of a flyer, but she could burn rubber. Even with her friend holding tight to her waist, tiny wings humming, she and Sweetie Belle were a blur as they roared down the road back to Ponyville, trying to outrun the setting sun in the memory of what they had just seen.
I don't have anything to say. Except, stay tuned for part 4. Shit's getting real.